Hello and welcome to another lecture of the Law of the Sea. I am Muhammad Tahmidul Islam, lecturer, Department of Law, World University of Bangladesh, and today we're going to talk about customs of the sea. This lecture has been produced as part of the online learning system of World University of Bangladesh. So first, let's talk about the general definition of custom. What custom is. Custom is the widespread repetition in a uniform way and over a long period of a specific type of conduct in the belief that such conduct is obligatory. So in order to form a custom, that rule, which is usually not written, it should be followed in such a way that the follower is believing that following the rule is obligatory. They must follow it. It is a series of successive acts which gradually become common practice, observed in good faith and finally accepted by all. The result of practice, which is considered as law, is establishing the existence of a customary rule. So now let's talk about customs of the sea. Previously we talked about custom, what it generally means. So now we're going to get more specific with it. Customs of the sea is a body of rules that is generally practiced by the officers and crew of ships and boats in the open sea, as distinguished from maritime law, which is a distinct and coherent body of law that governs maritime disputes and offenses. So customs of the sea are distinct from maritime law. Maritime law is actually promulgated by a state and they are written. But customs of the sea, they're not written. They're a much more informal in nature. Even though they are much more informal, even though they're not written, they are followed as if they are written. In classical terms, international customary law is referred to as practice accepted as law. So they are practice which are accepted just like laws are. Article 38 Clause 2 of the PCIJ statute and currently Article 38(1)(b) of the ICJ statute refer to this understanding as international custom as evidence of a general practice accepted as law. In its judgment of the continental shelf case, Libya versus Malta in 1985, the ICJ stated, "It is of course axiomatic that the material of customary international law is to be looked for primarily in the actual practice and opinio juris of state." So here we can see the International Court of Justice in its decision in 1985 in a case between Libya and Malta. It said that it is evident that the customary international law can be looked in the actual practice and the opinio juris of the state, or how the state actually acts, how the state actually accepted that customary law. In order to determine the existence and content of a rule of customary international law, it is necessary to ascertain whether there is a general practice that is accepted as law or opinio juris, which is like some rule which is accepted by everyone, which is accepted by the state, even though that rule is not written down. In the process of assessing the existence of individual elements, the overall context, the nature of the rule, and the particular circumstances in which the evidence is in question is to be found should be taken into account. So, in order to ascertain if certain rule is a customary law, these processes should be maintained. So, the overall context, the individual elements, and the nature of the rule with the particular circumstances in which the evidence in question is to be found, they are all need to be assessed properly in order for a customary rule to be accepted in the court of law as a customary law. Furthermore, it is increasingly difficult to find an example of a clean treaty or customary rule because in the continuous evolution of international law, various elements that determine the content and scope of the binding force of the law tend to accumulate. So customary law, as they are not specifically written down and as they are evolving, because what is not written, it evolves with the common practice of the people. So as they're evolving, it is somewhat difficult to ascertain, in contrast to the written law. However, it can be ascertained if we look at the particular instance and particular practice of that area and of that specific group of people. Example of customs of the sea. After a whale rammed and sank the whaling ship Essex off Nantucket on 20 November 1820, the survivors were left floating in 3 small whaleboats. They eventually resorted by common consent to cannibalism to allow them to survive. So, this is another custom of the sea which actually dictates that in order for your lives to be saved, if there is no any other means, you can resort to cannibalism, but you cannot kill other people. If the person is already dead and you have no other means to eat, you can, eat that person. But it is reserved for extreme circumstances. You cannot do it just normally. The captain goes down with the ship is another maritime tradition that a sea captain holds ultimate responsibility for both his or her ship and everyone embarked on it, and that in an emergency he or she will either save them or die trying. So that is another example of a custom of the sea, which says that the captain goes down with the ship, which doesn't necessarily mean that the captain is tied down to the ship. It means that captain is responsible for everyone's safety, and that is why he or she will be the last one to disembark a ship in a case of emergency. He cannot abandon ship as the first person. So these are actually the examples of customary laws of the sea. So this is the end of our lecture. I hope you have understood the lecture content, and if you face any difficulty in understanding the lecture content, you're free to comment in the comment section. I will answer accordingly. Thank you all for participating in today's class, and I will see you in the next class. Thank you.